Yo, can you hear me?
Yeah.
All right, let's do this topic. So, where's Muhammad in the Bible, bro?
Yeah, so let's continue Deuteronomy 18, Ibrahim.
Okay,
Deuteronomy.
so did you listen
Okay.
to what I was saying before about Deuteronomy 18? Should I begin from the
I, I
start again?
I didn't hear what I didn't hear what you said. You can start again from.
Okay, so Deuteronomy 18, verse 15 onwards. So Moses is speaking. He says, "The Lord your God will raise up for you a prophet like me from among your brothers. You shall listen to him." Okay, now the version of this text I'm going with, Moses says that the prophet is going to come from within your brothers. Okay.
Okay.
And I mention this because there is the Masoretic text has it as from within you, from your brothers, but the Septuagint, which is also quoted in the book of Acts, and also the Samaritan Hebrew
Mm.
Torah, all have it as from within your brothers.
Okay.
So Moses is saying, "The Lord your God will raise up for you a prophet like me from within your brothers. You shall listen to him." This is what you requested of the Lord your God at Horeb on the day of the assembly, when you said, "Let me not hear again the voice of the Lord my God, or see this great fire any more, lest I die." So, do you know what that's a reference to?
Yeah, where the Jews saw God on Mount Sinai,
Yeah,
where
so on
he
Mount
yeah.
Sinai, when the commandments were being given to Moses, they heard God speak, right? And it was too much for them. So they said to Moses, "You go and you go up the mountain, you get the commands from God directly, because we can't bear this." So Moses went to God, and when Moses went to God, God said, as verse 17 says, then the Lord replied to me, "They are right in what they have said. I will raise up for them a prophet like you from among their brothers. I will put my words in the mouth of the prophet, who shall speak to them everything that I command. Anyone who does not heed the words that the prophet shall speak in my name, I myself will hold him accountable. But any prophet who presumes to speak in my name a word that I have not commanded, that prophet or he speaks in the name of other gods, that prophet shall die. You may say to yourself, how can we recognize a word that the Lord has not spoken? If a prophet speaks in the name of the Lord, but the thing does not take place or prove true, it is a word that the Lord has not spoken. The prophet has spoken it presumptuously. Do not be frightened by it. Okay? So that's me quoting the passage. Now I'm going to summarize the passage again. Basically,
Yeah, I understood the passage. I understand it.
okay. So what I'm arguing is that this prophet is the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, based on the following. First of all,
Wait, let's just get into that. Wait, so do you believe your interpretation is a historical interpretation? Do you believe it's historical?
yes.
Okay, so who were the earliest people to say that isn't talking about an Arab prophet or a person not from Ishmael? Can you please give me the reference for that? The earliest people to say that
To say it's someone not from Israel?
it's like an Arab prophet.
Okay. So, who do you believe wrote uh, Deuteronomy?
No, I asked, can I get the earliest
I
exegete
know,
of
but
it?
my answer to that depends on your view of Deuteronomy, basically.
Yeah, I believe Moses wrote it. So
Okay,
can
so
I get
Moses
your?
wrote the entire thing, right?
I do, but I asked, can you get
Yeah.
the source I asked for?
So, based on that, I'm actually going to say Deuteronomy 34:10. Moses himself says it quite clearly, where he says, never since, so it talks about, Moses has died and stuff. So basically Moses is foretelling his death. And then in verse 10 he says, "Never since has there arisen a prophet in Israel like Moses, whom the Lord knew face to face, and who did all these miracles in front of Pharaoh and
I
whatnot."
asked. I'm sorry to interrupt you. I asked for the exegetes. So who was the earliest person? That is
Yeah,
from
but
the
I'm
text.
quoting you the text itself, right? So
Yeah, I know, but I asked for the exegesis. So who's the earliest? Can I ask you that question, please?
okay, well, I know plenty of people who interpreted Deuteronomy 18 as about a future figure coming, yeah, but about him being a Gentile, I
Yeah, I
don't
asked
have
for
a
it.
source. In fact, I believe many people, Jews, incorrectly interpreted the passage to be about an Israelite prophet.
So your interpretation is not historical, right?
If by historical you mean then, see, by historical, I thought you meant is this what Moses meant historically, and
I
not like an ad
okay,
hoc later
well,
interpretation?
according to all the early Jews, like for example, let me give you an example. So we see in the New Testament how many times it's used, plenty of times, always referring to a Jewish prophet. We even see diversity in the prophet like Moses belief. Like for example, when you get like John 1, I think it's John what John the Baptist goes to the Jews, right? And the Jews say to John the Baptist, "Are you the prophet?" And they ask them, "Are you the Messiah? Are you this?" They give him three questions, right?
Hmm.
Now, what's funny about this is that the fact is the Jews in their head still always believed it was an Israelite because they asked John the Baptist, who is an Israelite. But there was diverse belief if this figure can also be the Messiah and also the prophet, or just the Messiah and the prophet as well. But we don't see any historical interpretation. We only get this interpretation. Comes much later in Islam, where no one said it's a Gentile prophet. No one.
Okay,
So it's not
but
historical.
so first of all, I agree that a lot of Jews would have thought, even at the time of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, that he is an Israelite. But that doesn't matter because because the text doesn't say that. It doesn't call.
So,
In fact, if anything, the text explicitly says he's going to be a Gentile, but the
no, it
Jews just
doesn't.
misinterpreted it.
No,
Is
I
my
haven't.
claim.
So no, I haven't, and I've shown you historical evidence. If this was a blatant and easy interpretation to see that it was a Gentile prophet, we would see that this interpretation would be historical, but it's not. It's ad hoc.
No,
It's not.
because that's not a valid. It doesn't end the discussion. Yeah, it's not valid in that sense as an
It's
argument.
not. It's not. It's not. It's not. It's ad hoc, bro. It's you're adding
It's
to the
it, no
text.
no, because
It says
okay. Let me
within their
ask you
brethren.
this. Okay, let me ask you this. Did the Jews believe that the Messiah was going to come and he was going to be God and he was going to be crucified
Some
and that was
some some Jews had divine interpretations of Messiah. Messiah.
okay? Did they believe he was going to be crucified on a cross and that was the
Some
fulfillment?
we see some Jews had that interpretation.
Okay, which Jews?
Yeah, so we can see well the earliest evidence we don't really have much of their writings from the New Testament, but the earliest writings we even see it in the New Testament with Apostle Paul as well. He had that interpretation. So
But he's a Christian. I'm asking you if this is your criteria that you cannot argue a prophecy unless unless the fulfillment matches exactly what the Jews
and we
expected,
also see
not what the text says, but also what the Jews
and we
expected.
also
Then I'm
see
sorry, but the
wait
Jews
and we also
expected the Messiah to be a conquering king and not someone who would die
and we
on a
also
cross.
no we also see that even Jews and even Ibn Ezra says this that Jews
Where
believe.
is Ibn Ezra
Wait,
living? Ibn Ezra is post Jesus.
let me just speak. I'm giving you evidence
Ibn Ezra
because
comes after Islam, by the way.
yeah, I know he comes after, but
So what are you
no, I
doing?
know he comes after. Wait,
Your methodology is inconsistent. See,
let
I'm
me
saying what matters is the text.
you
Yeah, we can look at what Jews
yours
expected,
is
but
not yours
it's
is
not a
not
slam dunk.
yours is not consistent
Why?
because what okay because the reason why is clear plain reading. If you read it, if you actually read the source, it says within their brethren, it says within their midst, is very clear, and you link that to Deuteronomy verse 17 verse 15, it follows as well. And then you didn't let me finish. I was going to say to you that we have sources that identify verses like Isaiah 53 um, talking about the Messiah.
But who
Talking
said?
about the
Okay, which
Messiah.
source? First of all, which source?
What source?
Yeah.
Yeah, so we have Isaiah. If you read even the Targums, even though it
Okay,
doesn't
but the
link.
Targum is post Jesus.
Even if you don't link the suffer, most of our sources would have to be the, New Testament time period, first century time period.
Okay, so it
Uh,
doesn't matter because if we're allowed to quote post Jesus material for
but you don't
you,
have
then
anything.
I can quote post Muhammad alayhi salatu wasalam rabbis because
But
they're
no,
rabbis who said Muhammad is in Deuteronomy 18.
no, we don't have any sources before the Muhammad came that says that it was going to be an Israelite,
Exactly. So I'm
not an
asking the
Israelite.
same thing. Where is your pre-Jesus sources?
Oh
You're
yeah,
quoting
that's
Ibn Ezra. You're quoting the Targum. I'm asking pre-Jesus sources. In fact,
pre-Jesus.
this whole thing is useless because what I'm saying is it's what the text says is
You're
what
doing
matters,
it. You're
not what
doing
the
it.
Jews
You're
say.
doing it. No, you're doing 2K,
Wait,
2K
wait,
fallacy, and
one second,
also
Sigma.
I'm not doing a
Ibrahim,
two-way
I
fallacy
want
because
to hear.
I'm
your
rejecting your
interpretation is
argument
not
Yeah,
in the first
one
historical,
place.
second,
bro.
Sigma.
It's just not.
Sigma, 1 second. So, So Ibrahim, let's deal with the crux of the matter. Give him the substance in the text that shows that it's not.
Okay, let's tell you the text.
Yeah.
The text says that he's going to be from within your brothers. Now, your brothers can apply to Ishmael. That's pretty obvious from
No, not in
a
this
number
text.
of texts.
Not in here. Not in here with us.
Okay, why not in here?
Yeah, because we
Can
can
you?
see
Okay,
if you
let me
it
ask you more
uses
specifically. Linguistically, can you tell me linguistically how it doesn't work?
yeah, because the context if you read the context, I'm talking about the whole context, not just linguistically, but
Okay,
in the
but
context
linguistically first.
in
Linguistically, can it
in
be
the
the
context
Arabs?
in the context in Deuteronomy verse 17 verse 15, it uses the exact same language to talk about a king, right? And it
I
says that
understand,
you should not
but
wait,
you're
let
arguing
me finish.
contextually
And it
right
says
now,
you
right?
should
But
not
I'm asking linguistically first.
it says you should not, yeah, when it says within your midst, in your midst is talking about Israel, and it's talking about the brethren as they are the Israelites. It's very clear
Yeah,
from the context.
but as you know, I specifically quoted the variant version, which is in your New Testament
The
anyway, in
brethren
the
would
book of
still be
Acts.
referring to the brethren would be still referring to the Israelites, and also we
No,
see
wait. Okay, we can get to the context. I know what you're gonna go to Deuteronomy 17, right? That's what you're going to. We can go to that, but first, I want to deal with it linguistically. Okay, so the linguistics is this. It says in Deuteronomy verse 18, and then we'll go to verse 15. But verse 18, where God is speaking, it says Mekerev achehem, from within their brothers. Verse 15, if we go to the version that I'm quoting, it says Mekerev achecha, from within your brothers. So we have from within their brothers, we have from within your brothers. Now, linguistically, how can it not be the Ishmaelites based on
yeah, it would
this?
still just be talking about Israelites, and also
But
when
how? I'm
people
asking
wait
linguistically,
wait,
how
and
is it
also
not?
when
How can it not
and
apply
also
to
when
Ishmael?
bro, I'm not just using a linguistic argument. I would use a
Okay,
whole
so
context
if you're
argument.
not just using linguistics, can you agree that
No,
linguistically it could also be the Ishmaelites? Yeah,
no,
you do.
because bro, we know what the brothers are referring to in the context. It
Okay, you
doesn't mean
can make a
linguistic.
contextual
Bro,
argument.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Ibrahim, let me
Oh,
make this clear. Let me make this clear. Sigma, listen. Very clearly, you can make the case possibly contextually in a second. But first, the same way we grant you, for example, when you say Jesus doesn't know the hour, and then you say it means to declare, right? Right? So we can grant you linguistically, it could possibly mean declare. And then we get to the context, right? So that's similar to
bro,
what so this
I'm
is
not gonna
similar. Wait, one
separate the
second, bro.
linguist from the context.
One second. So I'm gonna clarify to you what you're saying. So similarly, I'm using this as an analogy to show you that yeah, we can grant something linguistically as a possibility, then extract the context to deem what is more probable. But for now, we're just the same way that we discuss whether oidin means to know or declare. Right now, he's talking about brothers, right? So is it possible, just isolated alone, brothers of the Israelites can mean the Ishmaelites possibly, before we get to the context
Acco-
itself?
Even according to the Old Testament language, Ishmael's never quite called a brother. So that's
But
another
is
point as
Israel's
well.
never
Never
called,
called a brother.
you're not making sense. You're talking Israel or Ishmael?
No, I said Ishmael is never
Ishmael.
called the brother of Israel.
Okay, so let's deal with that, and then we get to the context. So go ahead, Ibrahim.
Okay,
But I really
first of
want to get
all,
onto the context because there's no point just saying linguistics. We
no.
need
Well,
to stop isolating context from the
if you
linguistics.
concede that linguistically it can be Ishmael, but contextually it can't, then we'll get to contextual.
We have to do both, mate. We can't I don't like separating them. Why would we
No,
separate them?
because they're
We're
different.
just being they're the
Because
same. Yeah, go
because
sorry.
we have to deal with what brothers means from different perspectives, right? You can say it does because, for example, if the previous verse said, for example, if the prophecy said, the prophet will come from your brothers. When I say brothers here, it doesn't mean Ishmaelites. I mean an Israelite. Okay, then even though linguistically brothers could mean Ishmael, the context would rule it out. So your argument from Deuteronomy 17 is a contextual argument. But first of all, I want to look at the linguistics, and based on the linguistics, I'm saying that Ishmael can be the brother of Israel. Okay, and so can we at least concede that first?
They're not the brothers though. It doesn't say they're the brothers in the scriptures. It
Okay,
doesn't matter.
so
Doesn't have to say it.
It doesn't
okay,
say it anywhere.
Doesn't have to say it.
so
No, you're making an
what is
argument, so
okay?
I
So
need
the
to see
word
the
ach,
scriptures, bro.
yeah, the word ach. What does it mean?
I don't speak
the word
Hebrew.
brother. Yeah, it means someone who's a kinfolk, right? Someone who's your kin. So, in this sense, in Deuteronomy 18, what's actually happening is that Israel is being spoken of as if it's one person. Yeah, the whole nation is like one person. Like, you know how in Hosea it says, when Israel was a child, I loved him, and out of Egypt I called my son. So Israel, the whole nation, is presented as if it's one person, right? So in the linguistics of Deuteronomy 18, the same thing is happening. Israel is being spoken of as one person, because if you look at the pronouns and stuff, and it has brothers. Now we know Israel has brothers, and that includes Ishmael because of the following. First of all, in Deuteronomy itself, Edom is often spoken of as the brother of Israel, which shows you that you can have a brother nation. Okay?
Is Ishmael called
Then,
the brother?
huh?
Is Ishmael called the brother in the scriptures?
Okay, so in Genesis 17, it says that quote, your name will be Abraham, for I have made you a father of many nations. Okay, so there are a bunch of nations that come from Abraham. In Genesis 16, it says about Ishmael that he will live
amongst his
Al-Faneh.
brothers.
Yeah, Al-Faneh, which is like
And
you
it
can
says,
use the hostility translation
and it says
for
Ishmael's
this.
a wild donkey of a
It
man.
all it
Ishmael,
also
get rid of
it
that.
all yeah
Get rid
it
of the
also
slave
says
woman and her son. We don't want you here. That's what
it
it says.
also Sigma. It also says Benjamin is a ravenous wolf. So I guess we'll reject Paul
It
now.
says,
If
get
he's
rid
from
of the
Benjamin.
slave woman and her son.
Let me
Well,
finish.
hold on,
Let me
Sigma. It
finish.
doesn't matter because
Stop.
Jacob. What does Jacob do? Jacob, according to the Bible, he stole the blessing from Esau, right? So he's a thief in that
What does it
sense.
say?
He's a
What
thief and
does
a
it say? It says,
hey.
I've hated Esau and I love Jacob. That is predestination, my friend.
It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter for our
So
discussion.
it
So I'm
shows
not
where the
going to
line
get
goes to. It
into
goes
these
through Abraham
things
to
because
Isaac
right
to
now we're on
Jacob.
a very specific point. It says he will learn Al-Faneh, his brothers. So Ishmael, his descendants are going to live Al-Faneh, all his
It says
brothers.
hostile. It calls him a wild donkey of a man, and it says he's
It
going to be hostile.
don't go to that
So
argument because we're
why
not discussing that right now.
why would
You're proving just one
We're
second.
discussing Deuteronomy right now.
You're proving. Let
Okay,
me.
so we're
yeah?
discussing the
Just say it.
linguistics. It's a very specific discussion on the
What?
linguistics.
Why don't we
Now, if
use?
you want to go to a red herring, I can throw a red herring out as well. But it doesn't matter because right now we're discussing the linguistics of brothers, being a brother of Israel. So Genesis 16 quite clearly establishes that Ishmael has brother nations because their descendants are going to live towards the face of their brothers. Now, if Israel is not a brother of Ishmael, then what does this verse mean in Genesis 16?
Yeah, it's talking about how they know how they're around each other, they know each other, and
So
how
his
because
brothers include Israel, right?
in that sense they could be in that sense,
Okay,
yes.
so and obviously
But
also
that
linguistically
doesn't
it's
help the
Yeah, this
obvious
guy.
argument,
because
In a sense,
Israel
in a
and
sense.
Yo,
Ishmael and
Sigma, you always
Edom.
get baked, bro. Like
Okay,
bro.
you
You've
actually
never baited me. You've got
you
smoked.
always get baked,
You get
like
smoked,
every
bro.
single time,
You
bro.
got smoked. You've never
Yeah,
been
okay,
able.
so
You've never been able. So just sit down in the comments, fam.
Sigma,
okay.
you,
So anyway,
bro,
So
this
we
guy always gets baked, man.
okay. So we've established that contextually, brothers can mean Ishmael. Now,
yeah, but wait,
the
wait, wait, wait.
reason.
Let's not separate it from its context. I love it how you love
Okay,
to
let's go to the
separate it.
context now.
It
Okay.
says he's a wild donkey of a man, and he will
Okay.
live
Wait.
hostile
Wait.
to.
No.
Wait,
That's a
wait,
Wait.
red
wait, wait,
herring,
wait.
Wait.
Let me
bro.
finish.
It's a
Wait,
red
let me
herring
finish.
to
Let
the
me finish.
brother's point.
That
Let me
It's
doesn't
finish.
such a
Let me
matter.
red
finish.
herring.
Let me finish. Let me finish.
Wait.
You're trying to say. Wait. You're trying
No.
to
No. No.
say.
Okay.
Wait. You're trying to say it's a righteous prophet that's going to come through Ishmael. But what do we find in the Bible? The Bible doesn't even regard Ishmael as a prophet. It
Okay,
says, get rid of
let
that.
me
That's a
disprove
Wait,
it to
wait,
you
wait,
right
wait.
now.
Let me
Wait,
finish.
wait,
Let
such
me
wait.
a red
finish. Let me
herring,
Let's
bro.
finish.
just
Let me
pretend.
finish.
Okay,
Let me finish.
let me pretend like Ishmael is bad according to the Bible.
It
Okay.
says, it
Do
says,
you
get.
believe? Wait. Okay, hold on. Do you believe, based on Isaiah 42, where the Kedarite are rejoicing and stuff? You say that's Jesus, right?
Pardon
So,
me.
do you believe that those Ishmaelites are going to believe in
You don't
monotheism?
you don't understand. There's two types of things going on here. There's the spiritual things and the things of the flesh. So I believe that when you accept Jesus Christ, you become a child of Abraham through who? Isaac. So you actually become part of Israel. I do not believe that you're coming through Ishmael, which you guys believe you're coming through.
But you
That's a child
believe
of the
that
flesh.
Arabs, you believe that Ishmaelites are going to believe in the message of
I believe
Jesus and they're going to
Ishmaelites will
believe in
become.
Jesus,
I
right?
believe Ishmaelites will become Israelites in the sense of the
Okay.
spiritual children of Isaac.
Okay, but they're still Ishmaelites, right? And they become spiritually blessed. So you
They
literally
become they
believe
become they
that
become they
Ishmaelites are going to
become
be good.
Israel.
So something good can come from the
They
Ishmaelites.
they become Israel, right?
The,
You guys don't affirm that.
Okay.
You
Let's bring it
guys
back.
show
Let's
me
bring
that
it
in your
back. One
theology.
second. One
okay,
second.
let's bring it back. So,
Bring it back to the context, because then we
okay,
established
so
we established linguistically that you do agree with Ibrahim. Initially, you didn't. Now we're gonna establish from the context because you really wanted to go to the
okay,
context.
so
Go ahead.
as far as the context is involved, my response depends on your belief of who wrote Deuteronomy. So if you say that Moses didn't write all of Deuteronomy, that it's been corrupted, I'm going to give you one response. But if you believe that Moses wrote every word in Deuteronomy, I'm going to give you another response. So you believe Moses wrote all of Deuteronomy without any corruptions, yes?
He wrote, yes, he wrote all of Deuteronomy. Do you
Okay.
believe that, sir? Do you believe that, sir?
I believe that generally Deuteronomy is from God, but I believe it's been
No,
corrupted.
I said, do you believe he wrote all
Yeah,
of it,
it's a red herring, bro.
sir?
Keep going, Ibrahim.
No,
Keep
I'm
going.
just
Keep
asking.
going. Keep
I'm just
going.
asking,
Keep,
sir.
Okay.
keep
Can
going.
you just answer the
No,
question?
you don't believe Deuteronomy is written by Moses. Are you stupid? What's wrong with
Oh
you
my
guys, bro?
gosh, this
Okay.
is
How
why
do we
Muslims
believe that?
distort. This is why Muslims have no respect for the prophets. Continue.
Okay. So,
Yo, this guy's rage baiting, bro.
okay.
I said
So,
continue.
okay. Anyway, so I already know what you're going to argue, right? Is you're going to go to Deuteronomy 17 where it says, a king, you set up a king and just make sure that the king is from your brothers and not a foreigner, right?
Yep.
Okay. So the point here is that that passage in Deuteronomy 17 is a passage about a king, and then we have material about priests and Levites, and
Yep.
then about the prophet like
You
Moses.
see how it's all working?
Yeah.
It's
Now,
all in
wait,
Israel.
hold on. Yeah. Great. Now, in Deuteronomy chapter 18, there's something about the Levites which is interesting, that it says this. So, verse 2, this is about the Levites now. Deuteronomy 18, verse 2, it says, therefore, they will have no. Well, actually, let me just read here. So, they shall have no inheritance among their brothers. The Lord is their inheritance as he promised them. Okay? So, here in Deuteronomy 18:2, we're talking about the Levitical priests, and they don't have any inheritance among their brothers. Now, who are their brothers? They're other Levites, yeah? Or
Yeah.
they're other Israelites, yeah?
Other Israelites, yeah.
Yeah, so not from the tribe of Levi. So you have the tribe of Levi, and it has brothers, and those
Yes.
brothers of the tribe of Levi are the other Israelite tribes, yeah?
But where does it still remain in? It still remains in Israel.
Right, yeah. But we have Levi, and we have its other brothers. Secondly, in Deuteronomy, you agree that we sometimes have brothers which are within Israel. So, like an Israelite has a fellow Israelite brother, yeah? And that's the sense that Deuteronomy 17:15 is using brother in, right?
Yep. And Deuteronomy 18, verse 18. If you
Okay.
follow the
And
context.
also, you agree in
50, 18,
Deuteronomy
50.
that sometimes you have the brother of Israel as a nation, yeah? Which are Edomites, or like when
But
it
when it
says,
always when it yeah, but we also got to understand when it always uses in the Masoretic text, when it always uses in the midst as well. We always see in the book of Deuteronomy,
yeah, but I'm not
it's
appealing to
always
the
used for
Masoretic
Israel,
text,
right?
so it doesn't matter. I'm not
Wait, what did
appealing
you
to the
say, sir?
Masoretic. But
Why can't we use the Masoretic?
so in the beginning, I mentioned I'm not appealing to the Masoretic text because that in the Samaritan text, in the Septuagint, and the Septuagint for Deuteronomy 18:15 is actually quoted in the New Testament Acts when it's applied to Jesus.
Yeah, but it's
That
applied
version
to
of Deuteronomy 18:15 has from within your brothers. It doesn't have
yeah,
from
but
within.
you're using people's texts which they all believe it's talking about an Israelite. You do realize that, sir?
Bro,
But
that
it doesn't matter.
you're
It's a
completely
different
shifting. Okay,
text.
one second, one second. Ibrahim, I honestly think he's just slow.
Well, I'm just saying.
Sigma. As soon as he pins you on a point, and by the way, he repeated himself because at the beginning he already like explained all this. He already explained how Acts quotes it in a way that doesn't match the Masoretic, etc. He already explained all this to you at the beginning, right? And you're deviating the point again to the earliest interpretations when he's giving you all of this substance that backs his point, right? It doesn't matter if everyone didn't interpret it this way, if the substance leads towards that direction. So try to deal with the
Dean, which is
substance.
more historical interpretation?
Okay.
Complete red herring.
So anyway,
We're dealing with the substance. Deal with the substance he just
okay,
provided to you.
getting back to who the brothers are.
They can't.
So you yourself agree, right, that in Deuteronomy sometimes you have a fellow
Yeah, you can
Israelite
have
brother,
other
and other
nations
times
called
you
brothers.
have the nation of Israel has a brother, right?
Yeah,
Like
but the
Esau.
context is not talking about that. Yeah.
Okay, so like often in like in Deuteronomy, it says, "You will pass through Edom, the land of your brothers," so you can have a brother nation.
Yeah, I said that, but the
And
context doesn't
it's the
let
same
you go
thing
there.
in Deuteronomy. Yeah, and Deuteronomy 18:2 is using it in the similar way, because what are we arguing? Me, Dean, Orthodox.
Yeah, so
We're
you're
arguing.
arguing the brothers refers to the Ishmaelites, right?
Yeah.
Outside
So
of Israel, right?
yeah.
That's the
So
context,
we're
but it doesn't let you
arguing
go
that
there.
in Deuteronomy 18:15 you have a nation, Israel, then you have the other nations outside of it, which are its brothers. And I showed that Deuteronomy 18:2 linguistically does the same thing, where it talks about Levi, the tribe of Levi, and then its other brothers, which are outside the tribe of Levi, which are the other tribes of Israel. Just like I'm saying, you have the nation Israel, then you have the other brothers, which are the other brother nations outside of Israel, like Ishmael. So you quoted Deuteronomy 17, which is using it in the fellow Israelite brothers. Then I showed you, but in Deuteronomy 18:2, it actually uses it in the sense that I'm talking.
But
And generally, that's
it's
also the
still
case in
within Israel, bro.
Deuteronomy.
It's still
Wait,
within Israel.
huh?
The
Yeah,
context
but
is all talking about
linguistically,
Israel here. The
Yeah,
context
it may
yeah.
be.
One second. A second. I'm just going to ask you a very simple
it's not talking
question.
about other
And
nations.
one second. When in Deuteronomy 18:2, if I understood correctly from Ibrahim, when it mentions the Levites, right, and it mentions that the brothers of the Levites, can the brothers of the Levites be the Levites?
In that scenario, it's not
No,
talking
okay,
about that.
no, it's not. Okay,
But
beautiful.
in
So,
in that in
so,
that
so when,
context,
Yeah,
it's not
yeah,
talking
so
about that.
he's making
you're
a
saying
distinction
it's
between, yeah, go
Israelites
on, yeah.
because you're not correctly applying the analogy. Okay, let
But
me tell you what the
I'm saying
analogy
that
would
the
be.
con.
Wait,
But I
wait,
want you
hold on.
to.
Let me explain the
I
analogy
understand your
properly.
analogy.
Wait,
You're
wait, wait,
saying
wait, wait, hold on. So linguistically, you have the Levites, then you have outside the Levites the other tribes, and that's what I'm saying. You have the nation Israel, then you have the brother nations outside of it. Now you're saying, oh, but it doesn't matter because they're still all Israelites, right? The other tribes are Israelites. But if you want to apply the analogy correctly, you know what it would be. The question would be, okay, but they're not Levites. You get it? Because when we're saying nation, then brother nations, but you're saying, okay, but the brother nations have to be Israelites. So in the same sense, if you have Levi and the other tribes, then we wouldn't ask, oh yeah, but they're all Israelites. We would ask, oh, but are they all Levites? Obviously not. So you see, you're not. Do you understand my point?
I
No,
see
we,
your
we
point,
could
but
we could just
it
we
depends
could
in the
just say
context. But
you know what, they're all Abrahamites. It
but
doesn't matter,
my point is this:
right?
according to the context, we have the priest, we have the prophet, and we see it all that in its whole overall context, it's talking about Israel, right? Would you admit that?
It's yeah, like obviously it's a book of Deuteronomy.
So
It's
it's so
directed to
in it.
Israelites. It's
No,
talking about
I'm talking about
Israelite
these
stuff.
passages. In these passages, it's talking about Israel as a whole, right? M- m-
Yes, it's talking. Yeah, it's directed to Israel. Like
okay,
Deuteronomy
okay, yeah,
18:15 is also directed to Israel.
yeah,
Moses speaking to
and
Israel.
it's talking about people in Israel, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so my point is this, and I want you to get this, okay? So we see in the book of Acts, we see in the book of John, we
No,
see
I don't want you to go to the
wait
historical interpretation. We've
wait
already discussed that.
I'm just build on. I just want you to
We've already
understand this.
discussed that point.
I just want you to
We're
understand.
discussing the text.
I want you to understand this, and we also see in what do you call it, the pseudo Clementines, they also believed it was an Israelite. So the
Who
point
are
is the point.
Christians?
No, they're heretics according to me. So
They're
we
but they're Christians, and the Book of Acts is a Christian book.
and no, I'm talking about the pseudo Clementine homilies. They're
Who are
heretics,
Christians? They're Jewish Christians.
and
They
who
believe
did
in
they believe?
Jesus. What a surprise! They're
And
applying it to Jesus.
who did they believe it was talking about? An Israelite, right?
What a surprise.
You
Bert,
understand?
Wow.
listen.
So we
What
have
I'm
so
noticing.
wait.
No, no, Sigma.
We
One second. What I keep
we
noticing,
have we
brother.
have
One second. Ibrahim, it just keeps repeating. What
Okay, he
happened?
left.
No, I removed them because it just keeps repeating. So what happens is it's a circle. You bring substance to the table. You give him a response. You show him how it follows that it's other than the Israelites based on Deuteronomy 18:2. And you show how Deuteronomy 17:15 is only analogous if you grant the Masoretic reading. You keep mentioning the substance to him, And then what he does is he always goes back to, but no one interpreted this way. But no one interpreted this way. So yeah, he just keeps going in a circle.
To add to this, what I was basically going to argue is that he's arguing contextually, right?
Yeah.
And he believes that Moses wrote all of Deuteronomy. Okay, sure. This is great. But in the context, so he's appealing to a passage in Deuteronomy 17:15, which is about a king, okay? But what I would say is you believe Moses wrote Deuteronomy. So what about Deuteronomy 34:10, which is literally on the exact same topic as Deuteronomy 18:15, the prophet like Moses, and it says that no such prophet arose in Israel. And since in Deuteronomy 34 Moses is foretelling the future, like his death and stuff, it's a prophecy, and it's basically telling you no prophet in Israel is going to arise and be like Moses. So if you're going to look contextually, are you going to look at the other passage which literally talks about the same topic, a prophet like Moses, or are you going to appeal to a passage that talks about a king? Obviously, the passage that talks about the exact same topic is more contextually relevant.
Yeah.
And if we appeal to that, the prophet being an Israelite is removed, and it must be a Gentile. But if he would say that, no, I don't believe Deuteronomy is all for Moses, then we would say that Deuteronomy 17 is actually anachronistic, because it's very unlikely that that Deuteronomy 17, the law of kings, is from Moses. And if it's not from Moses, then basically it's very doubtful. Like, you're appealing to a text that is very doubtful in the first place. The reason for that is that Deuteronomy 17 says, basically, when you enter the land and you want to have a king, then no problem. Just, set up a king for yourself, as long as you make sure he's not a foreigner. But if Moses had allowed that in the Torah, if God had allowed that in the Torah, then, this doesn't mesh with history, because we know historically, according to the Bible, in the book of Samuel, when the Israelites wanted a king, they said, they said to Samuel, we want a king like the other nations. And Samuel, who was the prophet at the time, was disappointed in them. And God was disappointed in them. And God said, they've rejected me by wanting a king, because the idea is God is supposed to be Israel's king, but they would now want a human king as well. So why would God and Samuel have this reaction and say that Israel has rejected them and this and that, if in the Torah they'd said, if you want a king, no problem, just make sure he's an Israelite. Also, as we read Deuteronomy 17, the law of kings, further, we see that it's clearly a polemic against Sulaiman alayhi salam, Solomon. So it says, he must not acquire many horses for himself or return the people to Egypt in order to acquire more horses. So that's something that we know Sulaiman alayhi salam did, that he had a lot of horses. He must not acquire many wives for himself, or else his heart will turn away. We know that Solomon had many wives, and according to the Bible, Solomon's wives led him astray.
Yeah, it actually explicitly says that language as well. His heart's turned away.
Yeah. Also, silver and gold he must not acquire in great quantity for himself. But again, that's like, we know Solomon had a lot of silver and gold.
Yep.
And also, it said, remember the part about he must not acquire wives for himself, he must not be rich. But the other Israelite kings,
David, for example,
yeah, David, for example, he had a lot of wives. In fact, in the book of, I think it's still the book of Samuel, Nathan, and he's giving a parable to David, he mentions that God said to David that I have given you many, many wives. And in the parable, he's been given 99 wives. So clearly, if we look,
by the way, God says he would have given him even more.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So historically, we see that actually the Israelite kings had many wives, and that was never a problem. It wasn't a problem.
And by the way, another point to add to that as well. In I think it was First Kings, it says that David did nothing wrong in the eyes of the Lord except for what he did with Uriah and the Hittite and Bathsheba. So if he did disobey this command, right, of getting a bunch of gold and getting a bunch of etc., why is the Bible saying he didn't do anything wrong except for this specific thing with Bathsheba and Uriah, right? Right.
Yeah. So if we look historically, we see that David had many wives. That doesn't seem to have been a law at the time. It also, like, their reaction, God's and Samuel's reaction to when Israel wants a king, doesn't mesh with Deuteronomy 17 here. So all this indicates that actually Deuteronomy 17 wasn't a law at the time, but what happened is that a bunch of Israel's kings went astray, and obviously the Israelites themselves thought, they believed that Solomon had gone astray. So what the scribes did is they made up a law for the kings to deal with problematic things that they saw as problems. For example, they saw, according to them, Solomon went astray and started worshiping idols because he took a lot of wives. So they put in, oh, the king cannot have a lot of wives or else his heart will turn away. So based on that, Deuteronomy 17 is not from Moses. At least it's very dubious. Therefore, appealing to it in the first place doesn't work. And since in this scenario we're basically just we're doing this historical work, we can go further and say that even the wording in Deuteronomy 18 that he must be from your brothers, linguistically that only makes sense if it's a brother nation, because Israel's brother cannot be Israel. Right? Now, I didn't make this argument at the time because I was appealing to him based on his belief that Moses wrote all of Deuteronomy, so I appealed to Deuteronomy 34. But if we're going to do this sort of historical work, then even the phrase "from your brothers" it cannot mean an Israelite.